PlayStation 1, 1994. The PlayStation story begins in 1994 with the launch of the original PS1. At the time, the gaming world was ruled by Nintendo and Sega, and nobody really expected Sony to break into the market successfully. But Sony took a bold risk. Instead of using cartridges like Nintendo 64, they switched to compact discs or CDs. This gave developers far more storage space, which meant more detailed graphics, longer soundtracks, and for the first time, real voice acting in games. Suddenly, video games felt cinematic in a way they never had before. The PS1 wasn't just a technical achievement, it was a cultural one. It sold more than 100 million units, making it the first console to ever break that barrier. And the games? Legendary. Titles like Final Fantasy VII, Crash Bandicoot, Resident Evil, Metal Gear Solid, and Gran Turismo weren't just popular. They defined genres. For many kids of the 90s, the PS1 was the moment gaming stopped being seen as a toy and started being recognized as a serious entertainment medium. It brought a more grown-up style, attracting teenagers and adults, not just children. PlayStation 2, 2000. If the PS1 was Sony's breakthrough, the PlayStation 2 was their empire builder. Released in 2000, the PS2 didn't just outsell its competition, it completely dominated the market. To this day, it's the best-selling console of all time with over 155 million units sold worldwide. The secret to its success wasn't just games. Though its library was massive and unmatched, it was also timing. The PS2 doubled as a DVD player, which was a huge deal back then. In 2000, standalone DVD players were expensive, so buying a PS2 gave families both a next-gen console and a movie player in one box. Millions of households that might not have bought a gaming system chose the PS2 because it served two purposes, and then came the games. The PS2's library is still considered one of the best, with classics like Grand Theft Auto, San Andreas, Shadow of the Colossus, Kingdom Hearts, God of War, Final Fantasy X, and sports staples like Madden and FIFA. It also supported backward compatibility with PS1 games, which meant you didn't lose your old collection. The PS2 wasn't just popular, it defined an era of gaming. Even today, many players look back at the PS2 as the golden age. PlayStation 3, 2006. After two incredible successes, Sony hit some turbulence with the PS3. Released in 2006, the console had a notoriously high launch price, $599, which instantly turned many gamers away. To make matters worse, the Xbox 360 had been released a year earlier, at a cheaper price with a growing online service in Xbox Live. The PS3 also struggled at first with its complicated architecture, which made it harder for developers to optimize games. Early on, cross-platform titles often ran better on the 360 than the PS3, which was embarrassing for Sony. Still, the PS3 wasn't a failure. It just had a slower climb. It introduced Blu-ray discs, which provided enormous storage capacity compared to DVDs, and that helped the console double as a Blu-ray player, just as the PS2 doubled as a DVD player. Over time, the PS3 built a powerhouse lineup of exclusives: Uncharted 2, The Last of Us, Little Big Planet, Demon's Souls, and Metal Gear Solid 4. By the end of its life, the PS3 had sold over 87 million units, nearly catching up to the Xbox 360. What began as a rocky start ended as a strong comeback. PlayStation 4, 2013. Sony learned from its mistakes. When the PlayStation 4 launched in 2013, it came in at a much friendlier $399 price point, and it marketed itself as a console for the players. At the same time, Microsoft stumbled with the Xbox One's launch by focusing too much on TV integration and digital restrictions. The PS4 seized that momentum and never let go. The console sold over 117 million units, making it one of the top-selling consoles ever. Its hardware wasn't the most powerful compared to high-end PCs, but it was consistent and reliable. Developers loved making games for it, and the results showed in its lineup: Bloodborne, Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War 2018, Spider-Man, Ghost of Tsushima, and The Last of Us Part 2. The PS4 became the place for cinematic, story-driven single-player experiences that pushed narrative in games forward. Another key aspect of the PS4 era was social gaming. It introduced the share button, letting players instantly capture screenshots and video clips, stream to Twitch, and share their best moments online. Gaming had officially entered the social media age, and the PS4 leaned into it. By the end of its generation, it wasn't just Sony's redemption. It was one of the strongest runs in PlayStation history. PlayStation 5, 2020. The PlayStation 5 launched in November 2020, right in the middle of a global pandemic. Demand was enormous, but supply shortages made it one of the hardest consoles to buy in history. Scalpers, limited stock, and shipping issues meant that for years, owning a PS5 felt like winning a lottery. Even so, it has already sold over 50 million units in just a few years, proving the brand's unstoppable popularity. The PS5 brought a major leap in technology. Its custom SSD is so fast that load times practically vanish. Fast travel in open-world games happens in seconds. The graphics are powered by ray tracing for realistic lighting, with support for up to 120 frames per second in supported games, delivering smooth performance on 4K TVs. But what really stood out at launch was the DualSense controller. Adaptive triggers change resistance based on what you're doing, whether it's firing a gun or pulling back a bowstring. The haptic feedback can simulate textures like rain, footsteps, or the roar of an engine. For immersion, it was a game changer. The PS5's library continues to grow with hits like Demon's Souls Remake, Ratchet and Clank, Rift Apart, Horizon Forbidden West, God of War, Ragnarok, and Spider-Man 2. Sony also pushed forward with VR, releasing the advanced PlayStation VR 2 headset, which is considered one of the best consumer VR devices on the market. The legacy of PlayStation, looking back from the PS1 to the PS5, Sony has sold more than 500 million consoles worldwide. Each generation wasn't just about more powerful hardware, but about how games could tell bigger stories, create immersive experiences, and push technology further. The PS1 demonstrated that video games might be cinematic in nature. The PlayStation 2 transformed PlayStation into a cultural phenomenon in the United States. The PlayStation 3 demonstrated that despite any setbacks, Sony was still able to innovate and recover. The PlayStation 4 reminded everyone that games, rather than gimmicks, are what gamers desire most. Additionally, the PS5 is on track to be the most immersive system ever produced due to the capabilities of its controller and its lightning-fast processing speed. PlayStation has been in existence for about 3 complete decades at this point in time. It has vanquished competitors such as Sega, has competed neck and neck with Nintendo, and has fought Microsoft's Xbox. Over the course of all of this, it has grown to represent more than simply a gaming brand. It is a part of worldwide pop culture. PlayStation has been a defining force in the world of video games since the days of childhood nostalgia with Crash Bandicoot to the present blockbusters that blow people away, such as God of War.